What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. And today we're going to be taking a look at some of the mechanics from the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set that is going to be coming out in, I believe, mid-April. And this is kind of like a Midwestern theme set where we see Oko and we see a bunch of other evil beings, I guess, from Magic's history kind of showing up and, kind of doing their thing, but, just with a little Midwestern flavor. So we're going to be looking at some of the mechanics of the set while we kind of have now explanations and kind of some context behind what the heck they're actually going to do, with some pretty cool things to come up. But, of course, before we get too deep into the mechanics of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, as far as we know, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos like this, you want to see spoiler videos, modern Pioneer content, any of that fun stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel and ring your notification bell so you know when those videos get posted. And be sure to go down to the description of the video and you will find a link to my Discord server. Go ahead, follow that link, and join over there as well. So the first mechanic we're going to look at is Spree. Spree allows you to choose one or more additional costs when casting a spell. So the value in the top right corner you have to pay initially no matter what. And then everything else you can pay additionally. So it's kind of like Kicker. But so with Final Showdown as the example, you can pay a white, and then you could pay just one for the top ability to have all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn. And then you could also then pay just one to have a creature you control gain indestructible, or you can just pay, double white and 3 on top of the original white that you spent to cast it to destroy all creatures. So you essentially get like a Wrath for 6 mana, but with how this card is worded, you can pay, the additional 7 in the cost between the 2 white and then like the 3 generic in the bottom line, and then 1 and 1 from all the other abilities. You can have all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn. You can choose a creature you control and it gains indestructible, and you destroy all creatures. So since you go from top down resolving a card, all creatures are going to lose all abilities. So if anything is indestructible, when the spell goes to resolve, it'll lose indestructible. Then a creature you control is going to gain indestructible, and then you're going to destroy all creatures, basically meaning that for 7 mana, I believe, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, you're going to be able to Wrath the board and keep your most valuable creature around, which is really neat. And you're going to have all creatures lose all abilities, so any dies, triggers are not going to resolve either. So just kind of like a way to just, Wrath your opponent's board, keep your biggest thing around, and continue to have it around through the end of the turn, as long as your opponent doesn't have like exile base removal. So really cool. There's a decent amount of cards that have already been kind of shown off that have like this Spree mechanic where you can kind of pick and choose what is more valuable to you. You can play Final Showdown in the early turns, have all creatures lose all abilities, or to just save one of your own creatures. And you can play in the late game just as a Wrath, or, in the sense where you have just enough mana to kind of sink into it. You can just destroy the whole board and leave a creature around, or even just have all creatures lose all abilities, then destroy all creatures as like a way to kind of get around some death triggers, get around creatures that might be indestructible, and so on. So really neat. A really cool design in the Spree mechanic. Of course, I equated it to something like Kicker, because in a way you can kind of just choose what mode of this is what works for you in the situation in the early games, and then in the late game you can kind of just choose all the modes, and then you end up getting a very, very powerful spell. For 8, I think at 8 mana, this card would not be something that's playable, especially if it did all these things. But I think when you kind of break it up in this way, it makes it an infinitely more playable card. So that is the Spree mechanic. Let's go ahead and look at our next mechanic. So on Magda the Horde Master, we have a 2-mana 2/2 that says whenever you commit a crime, create a tapped treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn, which we see on a lot of cards here, where they can trigger if you commit crimes or do sort of things, and they only trigger once each turn. So the reminder text for this is targeting opponents, anything they control, and or cards in their graveyards is a crime. So if you do any of that stuff, you are committing a crime. You're going to trigger something like Magda Horde Master, and she allows you to sacrifice 3 treasure tokens to create a 4/4 Scorpion Dragon creature token with flying and haste. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is a pretty neat card. It pays off for targeting your opponents and things that they own and control with Magda in play, so you can get multiple crime triggers. And this is just kind of like the kind of reminder of what committing a crime is. And it's like one of the overarching themes of the set, obviously, with Outlaws, doing kind of underhanded things and, targeting people, whatever. Like, this is kind of, what it is, and this is one of the, you know, kind of payoffs in a way for doing it, is getting something like Magda to end up making some dragons and stuff. There's some other cool ones coming in the pipeline, but again, this is just kind of going over some of the mechanics of the set. So wanted to pick something that had some of that reminder text so we could actually read it and, you know, see what's going on. So that is committing a crime, just kind of a reminder. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at another mechanic of the set. So plot was something that we kind of looked at and had, you know, it was either going to be one of the most busted things or it was going to be very lackluster. We've seen, you know, other ways where, like, foretelling, you could pay 2 and then exile a card from your hand, and then you could cast it on a later turn by paying like an alternate cost. And plot is essentially sort of kind of the same thing, but a lot better. So plan the heist as an example. You surveil 3, and if you have no cards in your hand, then draw 3 cards. You know, you can do this for 4 mana, you know, whatever. But you can pay 3 and a blue and plot it, which means you exile the card from its hand, paying that cost, and you cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost, and you can only plot as a sorcery. So you can essentially only plot when the stack is empty on your main phase, and then you can cast the spell on your main phase without paying its mana cost, which is absolutely insane. That's, I mean, very powerful, considering the fact that, especially with a card like this, you can just kind of like play it, you know, like a turn that you're not really doing anything, and then in the future you kind of get this, you know, free surveil 3, if not draw 3, and it's kind of like your opponent has to, like, kind of not necessarily play around it, but has to be well aware of what it is. While this card in particular obviously has a little bit less of a, you know, not nearly as good as like some of the other plot cards, and especially now that we know what Fibblethip actually does, where you can look at the top card and then plot those cards, and then you can just play them as sorceries on late, you know, basically on the next turn for free, is pretty good. I mean, plot seems like it's a very powerful mechanic, has the potential to be very powerful, and we're going to be looking for some very, you know, high-powered cards, you know, in the Modern and Pioneer format to come from these plot cards. So who knows? We might see something pretty insane that could show up in a in Modern or Pioneer, but as of right now, plot is poised to be a very powerful mechanic in the set, and kind of look forward to seeing some of the more of the spoilers to see kind of how plot gets used in terms of, you know, what is actually going on in the set and everything. So that's plot, and we got one more mechanic we need to look at, so let's get to. So here we have the saddle mechanic. Now, this basically, from the way I understand it, saddle is basically like crewing vehicles, except it's on actual creatures. So you have Quill Charger, which is a 3 generic and a red for a 4/3 that says whenever it attacks while saddled, it gets +1/+2 and menace until on a turn, and it has saddle 2. So you can tap any number of other creatures you control with power 2 or more, and then the mount becomes saddled until end of turn. Saddle only is a sorcery. So it's a little bit worse than crewing, because crewing, you could just crew a creature, you know, essentially whenever you had priority. And this basically means that, like, when the stack is empty on your main phases, you're able to saddle the creature, and means that you cannot then saddle the creature again, you know, if there's any triggers on the stack or anything like that. So essentially, from the looks of it, saddled creatures are going to give you a benefit if you choose to saddle them. So it's kind of neat in a way where, like, you can just play this as like a creature. That's kind of like the crux of vehicles in a way, is that you need something to pilot them, and these mounts don't need a creature necessarily to pilot them. They can kind of do their own thing, and you just get additional benefits, you know, if you're able to keep other creatures in play and kind of like deem it necessary to then saddle said creatures and stuff to get that benefit. You know, there's obviously a way that you can kind of get blown out in a way. You know, if you choose a saddle creature attack, and then like the creature gets removed, well, you actively made like less blockers, so your opponent can maybe win some like combat, you know, end up getting in more damage or potentially winning the game off of things like that, you know. But interesting enough that now we have creatures, actual creatures that have kind of their own kind of like crew mechanic, and we've essentially got a new name for it. So pretty sweet. And overall, like, those are the mechanics so far that have been shown off in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Pretty thematic. I think Magic has always done a very good job of having very thematic, you know, abilities and things that are going on in the set that kind of, you know, synergize well with kind of like the lore and the world building that goes on with the set. And I don't think this is any different. I think, you know, plot, you know, saddle, very good. I think the fact that we have like spree cards now that, would potentially like close off like some design space or like playability on some cards, like an 8-mana Wrath, that we looked at in the beginning. Probably not very good, even if it's going to save one of your creatures and then blow up all your opponent's indestructible creatures. But the fact that like you can kind of like use it in different utility, different ways, and get other abilities like kind of early on, and then in the late game you can end up paying the full price for that very powerful effect is really cool. And I look forward to kind of seeing more of these mechanics kind of fleshed out, and even interesting beyond Outlaws of Thunder Junction, if we're going to see any of these mechanics kind of return to Magic. I think some of them a little bit easier than others, but obviously only the future is going to tell us what happens. So yeah, that's going to do it for me in this video. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below what card or mechanic that you're most excited for the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set. Where coming up, we're about 3 weeks out, I believe, from the set actually dropping. So I mean, I'm looking forward to it. Again, it looks really sweet. It looks exciting. There's some pretty cool cards that have already been spoiled that I would like to look at, and will definitely be coming in short form, with my thoughts and stuff throughout the week. So that's going to do it for me in this video. Hope you all enjoyed. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next one.